and talking about our publication, the source of our publication for a good amount of the conference, which is INVUT, the proceeding of ACM on INVUT. And then we're going to move for the second part of it to talk about the conference, what happened, you know, all the different programs. And as I said before, you're here because you want to hopefully give us your feedback. So there can be a number of opportunities for you to give feedback. There is a microphone in the middle for anybody who wants to give feedback. If you cannot stand, we're going to bring the microphone to you. You can also use Huva if you want to add questions. We're going to try to take a look at it. We are fortunate enough to have the president of SICAI, Neha Kumar, who will join us on Zoom as well, who is going to listening to the conference progress. But as I said, we're going to start with update from INVUT. So I'm going to invite Silvia Santini, the INVUT editor-in-chief, to get us started.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Nadia, and thank you everyone for being here. So it's me again, but we are getting close to the end of this conference, and I want to start, as Nadia said, to give you just a very brief update about the status of the journal and a few news. I mean, there would be more to say, but we want also to save time to gather your feedback. So INVUT, as also Nadia reminded, is the proceedings of the ACM on interactive mobile wearable and ubiquitous computing technologies. And as we used to call it in the beginning, IMWAT, because the name was so difficult to pronounce, at least at the beginning. As a reminder, IPACAM is a series of journals that ACM has started around 2016 after some discussions about it. And the idea was to provide to conferences, especially in computer science, right, so flagship conferences, an opportunity to keep their nature as conferences and the habit of people to go to conferences, present their work, network, but at the same time give them all the perks of a journal publication. And so this is why, after a number of discussions within the community, so UbiComp decided in 2016 to move to INVUT. Okay, so the new instrument that was offered by ACM was grabbed by a number of people within the community, and it was decided that UbiComp would not have proceedings anymore, but the proceedings of the conference would become the proceedings of the ACM on interactive mobile wearable and ubiquitous computing technologies. So from 2016 until today, there is a number of things that happened, and I wanted to take just very few minutes to go through a very brief history of INVUT and use the chance then to also reveal some important news. And well, what happened then after 2016 is that, I need to go back, otherwise is that we had the first INVUT deadline already on November 15, 2016. So I remember still the call of our founding editor-in-chief, Gregory Ebaut, I think sometime in September 2016, say, we need to do this and we need to do this fast, okay? And so we all got there and we managed to get things up and running, and we had the first issue of the journal published in March 2017. We then had in September 2017 in Maui, and I heard it was not there, but I heard it was also a great experience. It was the first time that INVUT papers represented the main content of the UbiComp sessions, of the UbiComp main technical sessions. And UbiComp, at least formally, did not publish any more proceedings, but only adjunct proceedings. Then, well, a number of things happened, but for the sake of time, I'm going to go to the next very important milestone, which is that in January 2020, also ISWC decided to join the journal first publication model. And so at that point, the PACAM INVUT had then two conferences that were under its umbrella. Then, well, I put it there. We cannot forget there was COVID-19 that, of course, had also an impact, at least on some of our operations and definitely on the conference. But then, well, we safely navigated until September 2023, where we published the 27th issue of INVUT, right? So I think that's, you know, in terms of quantity, and I think also quality is, well, this is the quantity, right? So we had a number of papers. Well, depending on the year, we have on average maybe 200 papers per year, right? So, and there are 4 issues per year. So it's a good number of papers published in these years. And while we were doing all this process, we also had, of course, the intention to have the journal recognized not only by our community, but also by others. And you know how we need to do this, right, is to have the journals listed in the important rankings. And so we applied for indexing within the Web of Science, and so we clarified. That process took some time and some effort, I would say, and a lot of very pleasant conversations, but we made it, and in October 2020, INVOT was accepted into Clarivate's Emerging Sources Citation Index, the ESCI. And this is one of the news I wanted to share with you. In July 2023, we got our first impact factor, and which is, I think, oh yeah. Thank you, guys. This was, of course, on purpose to create more suspense, right? So we received our first impact factor. It's a 4.0. I think this of course, refers then to the publications in the 2 previous years, so 2022 and 2021. As you know, roughly, the impact factor is computed by the amount of papers, amount of citations over the amount of papers published, with a couple of tricks. And among the journals that have been ACM journals that have been accepted, that received an impact factor this year, we are the second best. And I've also heard, even though this is not official information, but comes from our own research, that among the PACAMs, we are those with the highest impact factor. So I think we can be proud of this result. And now, of course, we need to do even better, I think. Now, after this brief history, I want to go through a couple of statistics of the journal, just to give you some information that you might be interested in. And, okay, so there was the happy face. In terms of new submissions, we have reached a relatively steady level, even though these are, well, numbers average. You remember, we have 4 submissions a year, 4 issues a year. So in terms of number of submissions, we are roughly, since 2-3 years, going over 750 submissions per year. We might have a little bit more this year. We need to see how the November deadline goes. But so we are navigating around this number. So it seems we have reached some kind of stable state. We have some preferred deadlines for submissions in February and May 15. Those are our preferred deadlines. It has obvious reasons. You know that if you submit a paper in February, then you have good chances to, if you get major revision, to resubmit in May, and then you can get into the conference. But also May is one of the favorite deadlines, even though people know that is a little bit hard then to get through at the first chance. So this is also quite stable over the years. So what you see here is on the x-axis the different cycles, as we call them, the different deadlines, and then the number of submissions per deadline. And another important point here is that what we are seeing in the last 2 deadlines is that they are getting higher again. I mean, we had this peak sometime in 2020. I'm going to talk about that later. But we are seeing now submissions increasing, right? We have to see whether this trend stays also with so this is a 1-year moving average, right? But it's important to see there. If this trend continues with November or even February next year, so we think that this might be due to the impact factor, so they gave more visibility to the journal, and so it became also more interesting to people that might be also traditionally outside the community. Anyway, we're going to observe this. There's, of course, more submissions is on one side nice. On the other side, of course, also means significant additional effort to manage those submissions, to review them, and so on. So next, what I want to show is in terms of papers published, okay, so we are also at a quite good level, right? So we have had a couple of years in which we published fewer papers, but we are around 200 per year. So that's roughly the number of papers we published, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the year. So we see a little bit of a trend there, right? So in terms of number of papers published goes up, and you saw, however, the other trend, which is the number of new submissions, is relatively stable, right? So I'm sure you already see where this is going, right? So this means that we basically have a higher acceptance rate. So we managed through the last years to increase our acceptance rate. So these are the numbers. We are now quite stable at 28%, but you see there is a trend up, okay? So that is what we see in terms also of increase on papers published. And this is, I would say, on purpose. If you see what happened, I mean, that deep dive from the inception of the journal up to 2020 was quite concerning, right? Because one of the reasons to also introduce the journal model was to give the chance of having revise and resubmit, I mean, major revisions, and, right, to keep, I mean, to have an acceptance rate that is higher than the one of the conference. And we were ending up with a more complex process, but then the same acceptance rate. So there were a couple of measures we put in place to correct that. And in particular, we observed that we were getting also, yes, more submissions, but more submissions of the kind we didn't want, which means submissions we had to desk reject, and submissions that were rejected after major revisions, right, which is something we in general don't like. The point is also, right, in the end, the job of the journal, or our goal, is to accept papers, not to reject them, right? Of course, we want to accept the good ones, but I mean, seeing the acceptance rate going down like this was really not good. So we managed to recover a little bit, and what we see now, however, even though the data is still little, but we start seeing a little bit of a dive again, and so we are monitoring that very closely and seeing what are the reasons for that. Of course, if submissions increase and the submissions that we get, again, are not those we want, then necessarily the acceptance rate decreases. But just to see that every single cycle, we look at the statistics and we monitor things and we try to see if there is the need for action. So I think, I mean, I could go on for long. I mean, people that know me know that, there are many statistics you can look at. So we have a file, so it's a shared document, just a Google Doc. We can post it then somewhere on WUWA, but here you can find the statistics. So those are usually updated every 3 months, okay? So some of the statistics might be out of date here. Remember always that also when you look at that data, we can only show, to say, what we call mature cycles, so which means cycles where we are through the whole process, and so that where all papers have been processed, okay? And that takes some time to go through the major revisions and so on. And so if you don't see some data, it's not because it's not there, but just because we are waiting for all submissions to be processed till the end before we show the results. Okay, so I mean, I'm happy also to discuss this, but we created a forum on WOWA. It's called Feedback on PACM Input. Please feel free to post questions there, or comments, suggestions from improvements, things you like, things you dislike, and we'll try then during or after the town hall to look through them and gather your feedback. And then, of course, later after in the discussion, we are happy to take some questions. Now, going back to the beginning, right, this history, right, and we could also talk a lot about the history before this, but these are all, I think, important milestones the journal went through together with the conference. But this is, so to say, these things, they don't come from itself, right? So what they need is they need people. They need people that puts a lot of work, a lot of dedication, a lot of effort, ideas in making these things happen, including the impact factor. And these people are really, really many, right? So it's starting from, and now, of course, the slides don't go. Sorry. Well, okay, with Mac, you have to help. I don't know if it's blocked. Okay. So there is a lot of people, so I didn't have enough space to put all the names, but really I think we should say, even if he's not here today, he had to leave this morning, but our founding editor-in-chief, Gregory Ebaud, who has done really a great job, really had the courage to push the input model forward, and I think history gave him right in saying that this was a successful experiment. Also, my colleagues and founding editors, Vasilis, James Scott, Koji, Yatani, who have been fantastic in the first year. I remember the many calls we had at any time of the day, and it was always a great pleasure to work with them. The current editors, who I all want here now, Eugene, Lena, Thomas, Flora, Alanson, Stefan, Christoph, and Chenren, please come on stage. I want you to get an applause, guys. You cannot imagine how much work. Alanson. Flora, here's Flora. So you cannot imagine, guys, how much work these guys do every single cycle and all the meetings we do, and they are just an amazing team. And of course, the former editors, some of whom are here, Tanzim, Tao, Judy, companion of so many adventures, and Jiven. Also our advisory board members, many of whom are also here. The 91 current associate editors, again, many of whom are here. Please raise your hands, and thank you guys so much. I mean, you're really amazing, right? And thank you for being so patient with all the reminders and emails that we send you constantly, and also to the 106 former associate editors that have been part of this adventure. I think it's about 7,000, but maybe even more external reviewers that we had in these years, and of course all of our authors, I mean, which is many, probably all of you. Thank you so much to everyone, because this is what actually makes the journal, right? It's not just a single person, it's not a single institution, is really the community that brings this experiment forward and makes it successful. So thank you all for what you have done. And I think now, to conclude at least this part, I think that IMUT now has roots, I think strong roots, right? It's like, you know, a child that when it started was really, you know, we had to do a lot of things and teach the child somehow how to walk, how to talk, and I think we managed to have something that now is kind of maybe a grown-up child, and I guess now we're probably entering puberty, right? And that's another challenge that someone will have to take. But I think, I mean, IMVUT has roots, but probably what it needs now is wings, right? So it needs to fly to the next phase, to the next next adventure, and also reach the next level of its development and develop its full potential. And you know the wings come in pairs, right? And that's why I'm so happy to announce that the new co-editor-in-chiefs of the journal are Lena and Thomas, my dear friends. An amazing team, and now I don't know if I can say happy, but to leave you this child in going towards puberty, and I'm sure they're gonna do a great job with with it. Thank you so much, guys, and I think now we can go ahead, or maybe you want to say some words, probably. Run to the beach, but they don't let me to.
Hold your horses, not just yet. Yes, yeah. Puberty is difficult, but we had a great start with Gregor's vision, he founding editor. I think it's fair to say that's one thing. Following through, that was you, right? Making the journal, getting the journal where we are right now, that was all you, right? It was all you. It was all you. You're way too modest. Way too modest. Sylvia, that was all you. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for everything you've done. You're free now. You are free now.
I have my bathing suit.
Hold on. You started this nice tradition to send a nice farewell to the previous editor. Of course, we're going to continue that because two makes a tradition. Lena, what do you have there?
All right. Again, Sylvia started this idea of sending off the editor-in-chief with a nice recognition of their accomplishments. I've been an editor for some time now, and I can tell that there are a lot of skills that go, and a lot of abilities that go into being an editor-in-chief. You need to have passion, you need to have dedication and commitment, and you need a lot of wisdom. Because many choices and decisions that Sylvia had made over the years had this very beneficial impact and moved the journal forward and moved the community forward. So in recognition of her wisdom and the fact that we are in Mexico, we have a spirit animal. For Sylvia, elephant is a symbol of wisdom and longevity. Thank you so much for your wisdom. And for those of you who talked to Sylvia yesterday at the dinner, you probably could see the glow of her anticipating that she's done, and now she can have a long vacation. So we wanted to help her with that. to go out with noise. There are some maracas.
I mean, I can only say thank you, really. And you know, when I stepped in as editor-in-chief, I gave Gregory a cowbell. I mean, living in Switzerland, right? And I remember he used that during the editorial board meeting constantly to sort of you know, raise attention. So I'm gonna use this a lot tomorrow. We're gonna have our editorial board meeting. I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you again, really, to the community. This is a fantastic place to be, not only being Cancun, but the community is really a fantastic place to be. So thank you all again, and thank you guys for stepping forward. Thank you. So, thank you. I have. Go to the beach. Oh, so cute.
Thank you, Silvia. Thank you to the input editors. Thank you to everybody. So we're going to move to our next part of the program. So the next hour or so, I don't really know. My watch ran out of battery, so I walked too much. It's going to be about the conference, what you've been experiencing here, what happened, and you know, we gathered some feedback from you. On Huva, we ask you to continue doing it even now. We will not be able to show real-time stats from what you're doing right now, but anything you do enter in Huva, we will consider it, we will discuss it, we will pass it on to next year's conference as well to our steering committees. So to help me, you know, going through the next phase, I'd like to invite my two co-general chair, Christoph and Monica, to come on stage. So they're not doing it alone. Okay, so you can take a seat. So all the data that you see, as I said, is very incomplete, but gives us a little bit of an idea about where we are, what is happening. To get a sense, some of the questions, so the answer you're going to see at the beginning, we have roughly 60, 70, 80 people who were answered. Some of the ones towards the end are more like in the 15 to 20s, but hopefully we get more of it. The way we want to run this, we're going to present you some initial feedback, but then we'll invite you over after each of these you know, segment of our town hall to come to the mic and to give us your feedback, tell us what you think about it. Well, the first data point we're going to give you, we had a question about overall, did you enjoy the new format? I think in the opening we had some discussion or some introduction about the new format. I want to give you a little bit of a history. So when the three of us started in 2018, as Monica mentioned during the opening, we didn't just want to make a conference in Cancun, we also wanted to try to challenge the community to change the way we do engage into sessions. The one of you that witnessed the UbiComp 2020 online shift know that we tried to do a little bit of that during the online conference, but it wasn't that easy to do it. So we decided and we engaged our new program chairs to try to do it again this year. So you all have witnessed you know, this new format where we had shorter talks and basically no Q&A right after the talk, but a panel on stage led by our wonderful session chairs that was trying to get, you know, not just to discussion points about one single paper, but really to wrap it up around the session topic. We also did add posters that were presented, that were submitted for the poster track, but that fit that session topic to be presented at, you know, within the same session. So we gathered some feedback. It seems like most of you liked it. Some of you didn't like it. So we want to know more from you about where do you want this to go and what are especially some of the things that you did like and some of the things that you didn't like. So I welcome you to come to the stage, and I'd like maybe the SVs to have one other mic ready for people who cannot come to the stage and tell us more. So please, any comment here is more than welcome. We want to know what did you like, what didn't you like in these sessions. Any question, any points? Please raise your hand, go to the mic. Jason.
Yeah, I thought that the panels were especially engaging. Sometimes in a conference talk, I find it a little bit difficult to like be on the same wavelength as the questions that are being asked. And so having the panel and having these sort of questions that stitch things together, I felt like it helped me think more about the space of whatever the topic was for the session that I was in. I appreciated that.
So stay there. You were also session chair. Can you give me your point of view also as a session chair?
Yeah, I felt like I prepared differently for this because I was trying to look at all of the papers and think about what were those threads that would bring them together. I think that having maybe a little bit more of a standard for what we think the session chair does would be really helpful there. Yeah, I think that as a session chair right now, you have a lot of latitude to influence sort of how the session is going to go. But you have a lot to work with the sort of the format of the panel compared to what you would normally have if you just have talk, questions, and that's it.
Thank you.
So I think you're absolutely right there, and this is something that is very new to the community. I mean, we used to have just talks, questions, and I think this is up to the session chairs. Also this I realized during the past couple of days, and this is a lot more work. I think it will take some time before everyone is up to date with that. But I think it's worth it.
Paul?
Yeah, I also want to comment. First of all, I was first skeptical with 8 and 4 minutes talks, but actually it's true. If you cannot say what you're doing in 8 minutes, then you cannot say it in 20 without letting people, this is perfect. And also as a session chair, of course, usually a session chair in traditional conferences, you are just a glorified timer. Whereas then you really had to do some work. And what was amazing for me is that you would really see a discussion with the public. Like people would come up doing the same work and you will not. So at a certain stage, it creates dynamics. So I think you did great. I love the new format. I think it really does a benefit of being here, not online, but seeing there, discussing and being here. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a note to that, I mean, it's not just, this is also a lot of work that went in the planning of the sessions. So Judy, Sylvia, and Edison did a lot of work there, and definitely need to mention there.
Yeah, and maybe as can I have this mic open as well? As not warning, but as a preparation for the next year and for future year program chairs, there will be some work to do there, and it seems like from our perspective, some of your perspective is worth it, but be prepared to do that. It is some more work. Thank you.
Hi. Academic conferences have a reputation for being harsh to newcomers because people would ask questions that are difficult, but important. And I think panels really gave an opportunity for authors to critically engage with maybe difficult or challenging subjects, but kind of from a collective intelligence standpoint. So I think people really engaged in those panels, asked really interesting questions, and it was a really nice way of doing it that allowed for that kind of discussion.
Thank you.
Hi, Dalhousie University, she/her. I actually really liked the panel, and I think that it really shows the strengths of conferences, especially when we consider IMWIT as being a journal factor. Conferences are really here for us to connect and to diversify our ideas, in my opinion. So having the panel means that we can have crosstalk between authors, and the people who are most knowledgeable in the area can provide a new perspective on research that is just up and coming. And I felt that it was more inspiring and kind of provided a chance to see more creative ideas. But I also want to echo what the person before me said. If an author is asked a really difficult question, they're also supported by an entire panel, so we can have time for authors to think a little bit, but also to engage with research in an interesting way to provide the audience a way of communication. And I think the session chairs especially reacted well to it because a lot of them asked engaging follow-up questions that I don't think we would have thought of if it wasn't in a panel style, because now you can relate research across the papers. So I really just want to compliment that.
Thank you.
Just to follow up
We have
on
time.
the difficult questions and, communication between authors and one specific member of the panel. So beyond the panel, we also have the posters in the back. And the idea to have those posters was to give you that one-on-one time and kind of a light discussion. And so we kind of provided the three things, or we try to keep those in the loop through the posters. I don't know if that, help with your, follow up on the difficult questions, one-on-one discussion.
Thad Stoner, Georgia Tech. I really like the posters, especially as you're going between sessions, you can kind of catch up again. But I did feel that the format presentations were.
So any specific one? So we had we have Invote 8 minutes, I think, and we had ISWC 4. Did you feel that was particularly for ISWC or for Invote or for both?
Well, I think the 4 minutes for.
Okay. So as we talk, since we're getting into it, I'm going to also bring up some of your feedback. Feel free to come to the mic. But this was some of what specifically you responded to the length of the different tracks. So it's kind of the question we asked, unfortunately, were not binary or so, where I had to interpret a lot of the comments. So I put positive, some concerns, negative in my interpretation. But you see it's kind of split between positive and some concerns in terms of the length. So although we had, I think, a pretty large, at least from initial data, agreement that the general format is done well. The length of the talks, to Tad's point, might still need to be worked out. From a session planning perspective, I just want to let you know it's really, really tough to have so many papers in our conference, unless, and that's Monica's, I think, point she's been making multiple times, unless we increase the number of parallel tracks, and then we can have longer talks. This is doable. Will cost more from a conference organizing perspective. It will also spread people more. So these are some things that we need to balance when we think about making longer talks. Please.
A lot has been said on the good of the new format. Something that Christoph mentioned, and I think he went a little bit under. Having this format kind of with a panel really put more similar papers together, and I found it personally easier to follow an entire session that was all about my common interest with the authors, rather than having to look at single papers that sometimes were on completely different tracks, and then you have to time how you want to follow. I think this is one of the really good things out of this session.
Thank you, and I know we already did it, but I want to acknowledge again and thank, maybe we should applaud the program chairs to do a fantastic job doing that. Thank you. Christoph, did you have a comment on the previous one? No.
I think your comment was that.
Okay.
What I wanted to say. Hi, I really, really enjoyed listening to the cross-paper conversation. I'm too tall for this mic. I did wonder if the compressed format encouraged us perhaps to skip over some of the diversity issues a bit, because we just didn't have a lot of time. I noticed that, a lot of the slides were very compressed, the font sizes were low. Even as a low vision person sitting in the very first row, I couldn't see a lot of the content. I noticed that in the user studies, people weren't talking about the race or the gender of their participants. We might have a study on hearing impaired or visually impaired people, and they just sort of grouped all the disabled people together. But when you do that kind of research, it's really important to know how many people were completely deaf, how many people could only hear a little bit, how many people, and I think that nuance was getting lost. So perhaps we could, going forward, give more guidance so that we can make sure that diversity element stays in, even if we're doing talks. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing I can say about that is that we try to give some guidance on our website, at least for UbiComp in ISWC papers. I don't know what is on Invote's site about, how to prepare presentations, both, for the publication, but also for the slides. We should maybe, increase that a little bit. I also think that we should maybe, I don't know, especially for young researchers, my students always ask me, or always try to cramp everything in their presentation, even if it's a 8 minutes presentation. And my constant advice to them is like, your presentation is a selling point. You don't have to say everything that is in the paper, but you can then discuss a lot of these points later. So I think that especially in this context, this is even more important because there is time to have more discussions, and we should maybe make more make more effort to tell our presenters, especially if they are young PhD students, to really kind of think about, you know, the presentation not being just, you know, a talk version of your paper. Any comment? No. Thank you. Thomas.
Thomas Plötz, Georgia Tech. Oh, I'm the co-editor-in-chief. Just a note on the panel. Yeah, on the panels, I like the panels a lot. I was a little skeptical in the beginning. Remember when we started talking about this in London? Will the junior students nervous, will contribute too much? I didn't get this impression. I think the panel moderators did an excellent job in getting everyone in. What I would like to hear is from the more junior folks, how did they feel? Felt they nervous? Were they comfortable? I did not get this impression. So a lot of junior folks, outstanding job. So, point of feedback. Maybe you can add this to Paul.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think we have in the poll, you can still add, you know, your own experience. I encourage, you know, junior people to do that. And maybe Mark, I think they're anonymous, but if you can add maybe just a note that your first time presenting or something like that, or second time, I think would help us understand that. And I know if your first or second time, it's hard to come up and talk at that microphone, but we encourage you to do that as well if you want to.
So we have almost 30% of the people who didn't like the new format, and we mostly hear complimentary things here. So I kind of feel the obligation to stand up for this 30%.
Please.
And
that's why we're here.
Say that I prefer the more traditional format for two reasons. One is that, at least to me, the panel in many cases felt a little bit forced because people had to come up with questions that fit all the papers, and it's not always easy. So you don't get to ask what you're most interested in, but you ask something that somehow fits all the papers. And the other thing that may be more of a personal one is that when you have talks with questions in between, at least to me, that question period is often convenient to clear my head a little bit, write down some questions, and if it goes, you know, from one talk to the other, it makes it a bit harder for me to follow. This was especially terrible during COVID when it was online and it was really one thing next to the other. Here it's a little bit better because people have to switch up there, but still not optimal for me at least.
Thank you. Can I ask you one thing? And I really appreciate your points. They're really important. And again, I think it's about balance. What do you think about getting these personal questions to your paper and only to your paper over like online through the app or something like that? Would that replace or at least to some extent give you that opportunity, or you feel like that's not something that works?
I'm not sure. It might. I mean, to be honest, I didn't do it here, but maybe I should have. Maybe that was my mistake.
It's not a mistake. I think we are learning, but we're trying to understand if that's that might alleviate that a little bit, maybe.
Do we have another microphone? Yeah, go ahead.
Questions in the panel only to all the papers might have the guidance. I, as a session simply ignored it. And it worked really well, because what would happen is you would have this question that addressed a single paper and would be answered by the author, but then the others would jump in. So I think the instruction to have questions to all the papers was not a good one, but as a session chair, you're free to ignore whatever you want to ignore.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe that's a good point. So to make it clearer that the session chairs have the authority to do whatever they want, and maybe even encourage them to do different things just to see how it works. Of course, not everything will be liked by everybody, but hey, that's always the case. So why not experiment a bit?
Experimentation, not anarchy. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And also I think you raised a very interesting point, which was information overload. We discussed a lot about that. So we place like back to back 8 or 10 talks, and perhaps that's too much. So new ways, to figure out, transitioning from a lot of content perhaps will help. Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just having run AV last year at Atlanta, let me say that these folks here are excellent. The AV has been running marvelously.
So in terms of what really worked well, I mean, I like the whole panel thing. I think the posters, most of the time, the sessions ran too late to actually really engage the posters. So, and a lot of time was spent in context switching, especially with kind of the guidance of have one question maybe that would go in between as people are transitioning, which in many cases just took too long. So if you have something like 7 papers in a single session, that's a lot of context switching time. So I think maybe a lower number would be good. As a session chair, I would say the thing that I probably would have appreciated was a bit more time between knowing like what session and then actually doing the session. Because, I think what makes the panel really a good one is actually spending the time to understand and prepare for that panel discussion. And I think that would bring way more value out of the whole panel discussion if we actually had more time to do it.
That's really important. I think one of the challenge for this, specifically for this conference, is that some of the accepted papers are only known in late August, which gives us really short time, or gives the program chair really short time to do it. But I think there are some changes that in mind, or at least planned potentially, that might alleviate that. Sylvia?
Maybe on this, I mean, this was definitely one of the, I would say, problem, right, in many instances. So we know the list of papers accepted for the September issue at best at the beginning of August, right? And then it takes some time to get them finalized and so on. And this is two problems. I mean, first of all, then you need to invite authors to present, you need to give them some time to respond, then you need to process the content and so on. So surely everything can be done faster, but it's just, it's just not a huge amount of time that is available, and after we know the final list of papers. And the September issue was also the largest one, right? 63 papers, so it's a lot of papers to and deal with. The other problem that this caused is also visa issues and so on, right? So if you have so little time, then from the moment you know when your paper is accepted, and then you can start processes. So that also caused a number of problems in that direction. So we had been discussing these already, and so we're trying to figure out if there is anything we need to change about the timing of the deadlines and maybe the number of deadlines so that we can cope a little bit with this. So just to know, we haven't taken any decisions yet, but we have tomorrow the editorial board meeting. That's one of the points on the agenda. So that might help at least mitigate a little bit those problems. But of course, we also don't want to go too much. Right, we want to have the most recently published content to be presented at the conference, so we need to find a meaningful compromise there. But I think that's a very valid point that was raised.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, this is obviously the main, we talked about the main part of the program, and I think we got a lot of interesting feedback. Again, please, 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 keep filling out these polls. Some of them have open answer. We will read every single letter you put in there. So it's really important that you let us know what you think. UbiComp ISWC is not just the main program, though. There were a number of additional academic programs. Pre-conference, we had workshops, symposia, tutorial, the doctoral colloquium. During the conference, we had the design exhibition, which is something very unique of this conference. And we had posters and demos, the gadget show, etc. So now we're getting into some of the charts there on the left that had less answers, so they might not be very representative. But it seems like there's a good amount of people who did attend these exhibits, these academic programs that are not the main conference, and you know, most people have been engaging with that. So we didn't hear any particular problem or issue, but again, I would like to invite you to share your experiences. You know, we did introduce, for example, invited symposia this year because we wanted to focus on broadening local participation. So you might have seen we had a symposium called UbiComp for All and a symposium called Asset. So that's one thing we try to do, and we have a number of workshops that were also, I think, very successful. Again, any question, any feedback about any of these programs, please come to the mic. Let us know if you had experienced something that you liked or you didn't like, or if you have any advice on how to do it differently or better, you know, maybe in the future. There's maybe one, two, yes, go ahead.
Excuse me. I really like the gadget show. It's one of my favorite parts of this. It would be nice, I think, a little bit more prep for it. I think some of the people sharing their gadgets had demos or something that they wanted the screen to be used. And I think it would be nice, because it is such a big part of this community, to show off our gadgets, to have known how to do it just before.
Okay, I think there is some history there. I don't know, Christoph, if you want to talk about how it was formed.
Yes, I mean, the history is a very long one, and also depends from year to year, and also depends on who is organizing it, of course, and how much work goes into it. I mean, we've had years where we had professional video crews following the people with their gadgets. We had years where people just went on the stage and moderated and joked about what they had to show. I mean, I think there's several aspects that are good and that are bad about this. It really depends, I think, on the spontaneous interaction with the people, and there's pros and cons for one or the other. I think some people will definitely not like it when they have to show something and suddenly a video crew comes around them and starts filming them. Other people might prefer the more spontaneous interaction. I think that's something where we need to also find a balance, and it's a trade-off.
I was thinking having just like a universal cable plug in your laptop if you want to have that showing.
Yeah, depends on how many people are attending as well. Also, that is something where we had lots of experience, but there were always a few cons and a few pros.
So you can actually talk to the person right behind you, because he's going to be our next Gadget Show chair.
And was.
Thank you.
Together with...
He was active.
He was, but he was kind of appointed at the last minute, literally.
No,
Oh, in
in 2019.
2019, so a lot of experience.
Always a little slot minute anyway. Glad to help. Actually, still part of my question, because I realized that a lot of people know what the gadget show styles, or if they have a paper, they assume they have presented, and actually the informal way that it's done at the gadget show kind of makes a point for them to come back and still represent. Maybe someone was at a different track, it's still all during the... So probably advertise a little bit more, not necessarily in advance, not like 1 month or anything, but let them people know that if they have the demo, if they have design, but they still want to present in a formal way.
Yeah, it was advertised on the website, I think even a month beforehand. I mean, Paul actually took care of that. But also that is, I think, one of the things, there's so many things going on in the conference, it's very easy to miss. I mean, if you look at the size of our website at the moment, it is extremely sizable. I mean, it's really big, it's very easy to miss things. Yeah, it's a hard task.
So one thing you said that might be interesting is we have demos, right? We have design exhibition. These are submitted work that's been submitted, reviewed, and accepted. But that doesn't mean that they cannot, and they have their venue, but that doesn't mean they cannot also be part of the gadget show in some way. And I think that's interesting. And to your point, a lot of our papers are demonstratable, right? They can be a demo somehow. And maybe that's what we should do. We should encourage every presenter this year really to say, hey, is there something you can or you want to present in a very short way but impactful way, into the gadget show?
Also, like from having run the gadgets show this time and from a long history of being part of it, I think that the whole point of it is this informal thing, right? If a demo, you have to prepare a demo, it's a good demo. And maybe what we should do more, and we didn't do it this year enough, is to encourage everybody who is there, right? Because if you have a paper, you have a piece of hardware associated with it. Doing a demo is an effort. You have to invest something. But just bring it to the gadget show, wave it informally, right? Tell how cool it is. And I think that, for me, is the spirit. So not make it that formal, but actually more inclusive, right? Anything that you have, and I think this sort of a jokingly, so I think that's the whole point of the gadget show. It's not a hardware demo, it's a gadget show.
Thank you, Paul.
So this is about the workshops. So I did not participate in those pre-conference, but I heard from a few people that stretch goal, but they would like, if possible, to not make it pre-conference, but somehow integrate some of the things. And I know it is a stretch goal because workshops sometimes do not have enough attendance because of that. And more specifically, people thought that the tutorials became too overwhelming because you are learning something new, hopefully, and if you are doing that for 6 or 8 hours in a day, that becomes really hard. So if there is a way to divide it up over 3 or 4 days that you are spending an hour or two over multiple days, just something to think about.
Okay, that's good. So I think for next year, it's going to be pre-conference, but that's something we can think about. And maybe there is a way to create a new venue that it's, an hour instead of tutorial were half a day. Workshops typically are a whole day. Maybe there is a 1 hour thing that can happen. I think at the Chi conference, for example, there is, I think they're called SIGs, special interest groups that are like that, 1 hour. So that's something we can think about if that's something that the community wants to do. Yeah, it's interesting.
So the other thing that we have done at Year and High, and another conference we organized, we invited workshop chairs to provide like a summary of the discussion that would happen pre-conference. So look for those spaces and to have, it will allow you to get, feedback from what happened from the pre-conference and involve somehow during the conference.
I wanted to follow up on that. I actually feel like as someone who's somewhat newer and still has a lot to learn about areas of UbiComp that I don't know as much about, some of the workshops, I feel like I learned a lot and I got a lot out of. I really enjoyed the format. I don't know how much of it was being in person rather in previous years being online. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed the workshops and I got a lot out of attending some of them.
Thank you. Thank you. And as a reminder, while we have workshop chairs that obviously select workshops, typically workshops are completely independent in the way they are run. So again, as a workshop organizer, present or future, you can think about implementing any kind of way you want to engage your audience because it's your own. It's really up to you. And organizer's role is usually to try to, make sure that you can do what you want to do. Aldi.
Yeah, so I would like to, I'm curious after seeing the graph of the design exhibition, just as a co-chair, I would like to ask maybe the people who didn't attend the design exhibition, like what were the reasons? Because I think different from other years, this year the design exhibition was open for 3 days. And it's like, was it that it was busy with the other sessions? It was not advertised well, even like we tried, I think, through different medium. So I'm just curious, or maybe it's not of the community's interest, or just to kind of like gauge what the reason was. Thanks.
Thank you, Aldi. We're gonna maybe get an answer, but you can also create like Sylvia did, maybe a a discussion forum on Hoover and see if people can maybe engage on that online.
I feel there is also a thing like two available, that if it's always there, people think that I'll go like this time or that time, and it never happens.
Cool. So we have 15 minutes left. I want to switch to a couple of non-academic things that we introduce in this conference and get your feedback. So one of the reasons we are here today is because in 2018, I don't remember who it was, but somebody asked Monica, hey, we really want to do UbiComp in Latin America. Who was that? Somebody. And we said, yes, we will do it. UbiComp, if you don't know, UbiComp this week has never been in Latin America. This is the first time. But we strongly believe that we didn't want just to come here and leave, but we wanted to engage the local community, the local university, the local people. If you missed the opening, Mexico is the 4th country by attendees at this conference, which is great, so congrats. So to do that, we had to implement a number of programs. So we decided to implement a number of programs. For the first time at UbiComp ISWC this year, not the first time in ACM, Kai did it, we implemented tiered reduced registration rates. So depending on the countries you were coming, you had different kind of registration rate. Low-income country could register for the whole conference for $112.50, which is a really good price. We had, thanks to our sponsor, SICAI especially, we were able to award a number of travel awards for people to travel here from Mexico, but also from far away. We introduced the Asset Symposium. Again, I think it was the first time at UbiComp, but it's a symposium that happens all the time. It was the second one. To engage, again, South American, Latin American students. We engaged with the local University of Anahuac, and we had other kind of initiative. So I think they were successful from our perspective. They really allowed us to bring people here. Some of those were expensive. So reducing the registration rate is something that obviously impacts your budget, so you have to balance that as a registration share. So we wanted to get some sense from people here that either did actually, profit from some of these initiatives, but also from others in terms of, should we keep doing it? Should we do more? There was too much. Did it work? Any comment is very welcome here.
Just a quick comment, and maybe this is more for Sylvia and the new editors-in-chief.
And this is Afra,
Hi.
who is your broadening participation chair from our conference.
Yeah, and so I really appreciate everything that, all the initiatives for this year, but I've been wondering that if there is a mechanism for us to measure in terms of the demographic of how, especially since after pandemic and maybe since the proceedings became a journal, in terms of the demographic of participants and also people who publish in the journal. And knowing that information maybe can also help us to bring a more diverse participation, maybe through, I don't know, notes or short papers for UbiComp, so having a different audience involved.
Yeah, so make sure to come to the closing, because we have one very important point on that, a plan that we're going to talk about. But yes, giving more venues for, additional, I think, submission, participation that are quote unquote easier to get than a full input paper, I think will help a lot. That's what Asset has been doing as well in a relatively small kind of thing. I would like to ask Monica, maybe if you can comment on how was the reception maybe from the Mexican community?
I don't know. I guess they are very happy that it is so difficult for them to travel, to Europe, or it's so expensive, and with the budget that we get from Mexico, it's not possible, and not all researchers have these huge grants and can't afford the travel and the registration costs. So I think, keeping that, I will say keeping, the reduced registration rate, we really encourage a lot of these individuals to actually attend more and be more engaged to UbiComp. I think one of the challenges that we have, and this is particular in Mexico, perhaps Latin America, is that high impact journal factors, are the ones that really, our community reviewers, care. So now that input has, the impact factor, that it's something that we can actually use for our evaluations. So I guess those two things, it's something that will involve more this community. And of course, the idea that, highlight that you guys wanted to have it here in Latin America to involve all this community, it's encouraging for us and say, you guys want us to be part of it, and so to get more involved. So I guess it was very well received. We are very thankful that we did this, and I guess our next steps is to how to move forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Monica. So we only have a few more minutes left. Edison, you wanted to comment on the last point or on the next one?
The previous point.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a quick one. Hi, I'm Edison from Georgia Tech, from UT. Used to be Georgia Tech. Used to be Georgia Tech. Sorry. Anyway, so on the topic of broadening participation, I know, being on the organizing committee, that this discussion about online participation, remote participation is always an issue. But I remember back, in the pandemic days, when we reflected on the fact that, hey, we actually have people from these places that have never been able to attend UbiComp, right? And they're now connecting, and they're participating, and they're joining. And so I'm not really hearing that idea come up as much anymore. And we're back to our numbers, the challenges of paying for the conference and all that. And so I completely sympathize with that, but I'm just wondering if we should also consider that as an option in the context of broadening participation, not so much in the context of how we're going to pay for the conference.
Yeah, I think this is a really
big
good
topic,
point.
right? Much more than we can discuss here, but it's just something I want to
But I'm going to add maybe 2 quick points. We also organized the 2020 conference, and we had more than 1,000 participants online, and like 3/4 were students or more, maybe more than that. Why my slide disappear? I don't know. And most of them, to your point, were first comer, never been there. And what we heard is exactly that. Wow, there was a great experience. Yes, we should do it, but we have to do it in a way that we still can bring people to the conference, and this year maybe we pushed a lot to make it an in-person only conference, because we wanted to really try the community to come back and show them what it means again to be together. But I think going forward we should try to implement both in some ways. And I know it's not easy, so next year's chair is going to be challenging, but I think if we can try to find, or if we can find ways that we can do both, I think that's ideal, yes.
Yep, I would like to follow up, but yes, I do agree with you. And so I don't know how many people from Mexico are here, but I think it was an investment. So it is a lot of money, that went into that part. And so as a community to think, how can we repay that back and be more engaged and support the next conference, even if we decided to keep it or not, right? But I guess it's a personal responsibility, and for those who benefit from these programs as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have 10 minutes left. I want to spend it talking about 2 other initiatives that are in the justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, settings, family and sensory room, and then our accessibility support. So we, again, for the first time at UbiComp, following up on some conferences, but I think we did it a little bit different. We introduced more support for families who had, children or needs, to be supported as a family, as well as sensory rooms for, neurodivergent participants to have a space that would support them more during the conference. So we got some good feedback. It seems everybody, or a lot of people, agrees it's very important. Some people didn't think that it was. Maybe they didn't need it. I don't know. I feel very strongly that these initiatives should be in every conference, and I will push that personally into next conferences as well. But I also wanted to see if people have any comment, any additional things they want to say about our family and sensory rooms. You can come to the mic and then we can go there. Yeah. Jen.
I really appreciated that there was 2 different sensory rooms. Other conferences tend to kind of maybe just create one and say, oh, like all, neurodivergent people are the same. So in this case, like having a silent room for just a variety of needs, and then having the other high stimulation room was very nice. And I did appreciate how there was a variety of seating in that room, not just floor seating, but also couches, tables. That was very well thought out. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to compliment especially our JEDI chair on that. Yes, I worked hard with them, but a lot of it came from there. And we have Jen and Luis here and Tammy who couldn't make it, so thank you so much. And Jen has a question.
I actually wanted to pass on something, because often the people that need the sensory rooms don't feel comfortable advocating for themselves. So I want the community to know that I had a number of autistic students come up to me and say they would not have been able to attend the conference without them. There's so much stigma against disability that many young people with disabilities don't feel comfortable being out about it, and it's so easy to cut this as a budget item because the people that need it the most don't feel comfortable asking for it. So on behalf of the many students that came up to me, thank you for doing that.
So along the way of that, another part of our JEDI focus was accessibility. Again, Jen is our accessibility chair, and we asked specifically about accessibility support, which was our real-time captioning. As you can see in every room, we had real-time automatic AI generated real captioning, but we went with a company that's supposed to be a little bit better than just relying on Zoom or on whatever is out there. People in general use that. We had we wanted to not target, but serve both people who have a hearing disability, but also people that are maybe not first language English, or are English learners, so they could actually follow along. So we asked about using real-time captioning, and also this year, since we use this service that's called Interprify, they also offered us to be able to do real-time translation. And it seems like people liked the captioning. Some of them used it. People feel that it is important. The translation may be less. There was more of an experiment. But again, I wanted to see if there is any additional thoughts about it, especially going into next year. Is that something we should repeat or not? Anybody maybe who have been using some of these tools? You have a different point? That's good. Yeah. Now bring it up. We only have a few minutes left. So.
Just real quick, 2 points. I love that we have the stress and mental health session. I think that's so wonderful, especially because a lot of folks go through a lot, right? And so to piggyback off that, I think having a meditation and prayer room, I think is really critical. I love that you did the family thing. I didn't bring my 3 kids, but I hope to next time. So I look forward to that room. But do we have, I was asking a few folks, and maybe you already do have a room like this, but...
Well, it's the idea that we had that maybe didn't work because of your comment, is that we could use, and we had some instruction on the website, the sensory rooms as a dual role, especially, I think it was the quiet room, that we were thinking that could be our, our room for meditation, and so...
There was a quiet room. Beautiful. I love that. The other point I wanted to make was with regards to visas. Did we do anything for students that have issues with regards to visas? I know in CHI, for example, there was like a concerted effort to tackle this early on. when we know someone has an issue to address it. So I'm just wondering, did we do anything this
So we
time?
tried to support everybody who needed letters. Sometimes, you know, wet signature was needed. Sometimes they needed the letter to be sent by postal mail. So we did all of this, but we had no control really on the, you know, on the embassies, etc. I don't know if that is even possible. That's not something we explored, but maybe that's something to do in the future to try to create some kind of a, I don't know, liaison with the embassies to try to see if we can do more than that. Because yes, we had a lot of people that got their visa denied, sometimes at the last minute, and this impacted their attendance. It's a difficult topic because it's not something we personally have any experience with. So every country is different. So getting a Mexican visa in India is very different than getting it in China or getting it in Australia or getting it. So it's interesting because it's one country, but the way and the processes were very, very different depending on the country you were residing. So it's
Right, and I just want to say, what a lovely, lovely conference, truly. And so I just want to, I want to end on a positive note.
Thank you.
You know, although we're complaining here and bringing up so many issues, but I just want to say, great job, you guys. Thank you so much.
There is maybe one more question from Lina, and then I'm going to close with this open question that I would like you to answer, you know, offline in the last, you know, few hours of a conference. But yeah, Lina.
Not a question, but a quick comment on the visa issues. So I was a paper chair last year and technical program chair, and one recommendation that was made that I forgot about, so I want to say it now before I forget again. For the submissions that were accepted in earlier cycles, those authors already know that they will probably be coming. Visa invitation letters for those could be issued a lot earlier because everybody is getting their visa letters at the very end. And so I know that it doesn't help those who were accepted in the last cycles, but it could help those who were accepted earlier, just as an idea. I haven't
like
thought about it yet, but
and I think it's a collaborative effort between the author and the organizers, and sometimes the organizer don't know if they need it, and sometimes the author are late, sometimes the organizer are late. Maybe one thing we could do, Lina and Thomas, is for every accepted paper to just by default send an acceptance letter, even if you don't know if they need a visa or not. So they have it. And then whenever they need it, they have the letter already with them. Like from the conference? Yeah, but I think you need it from the conference to be able to get a visa. Yeah, we can work on that.
The other thing that you might be able to do for the people who have papers accepted right before the conference is to offer them the ability to push it out a year. There would be like a little bit of a growing pain up front because you might have some shifting that you don't want, but I think it'll wash out over the years because people will shift forward to a place that will be easier to get a visa or they'll have more time to do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just to follow up on the visa thing, so we did reach out to the embassy in Mexico and we did all the paperwork, and they told us that the only thing they can do is to inform that this event was going to happen. But the interview at the port of entry or your interview, that's something that no one can help you with. So perhaps some, help along with the visa, that's the only thing that we can do. Yeah.
Great. So as a reminder, there are these questions still on the poll. So we really would like you to let us know what you find most valuable about this conference, what other activities we might do that might engage you or the general audience more, what were your takeaways, and if there is anything else you would like us to know. Other than that, I'll let you go to your next section, and thank you so much for being here. And
please,
for
a last applause for our general chairs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.